Okay, so I know there's a lot of people out there right now who honestly did not enjoy the GCW World on GCW show. For those of you who are not in the loop, Game Changer Wrestling just had their biggest show, possibly the entire company. They just held their first Hammerstein Ballroom show, packed in front of a sold out crowd, and I was there. I was there in person. It happened yesterday, and whew, so a lot of people, and I mean, like, I would say of the ratio of people who've been saying good and negative and in the middle things about this show, I've seen a lot more negative about this show. I've seen a lot more people who didn't like it, the people who actually did like it, and the people who didn't like it, I would say outweigh it, because a lot of them were people who don't watch GCW consistently, or maybe this is their first time watching, because after all, because this was their biggest show and they had the big market of being in New York and they had the promotion going on and they had the pre-show available on YouTube and then people talking about it across their social media platforms. I had a few viral videos on TikTok because of it. Like, the show had some attention. A lot of new wrestling fans watch this show, and I see a lot of the newer people who watch this show, people who don't watch GCW, did not like this show. And I can say, in that sense, I could see why you would not enjoy GCW if you're not really in tune or used to watching independent wrestling. I could completely see why somebody who might watch AEW or WWE weekly and maybe don't watch a lot of indie wrestling, maybe don't watch much of anything else outside of mainstream American wrestling, would not like this. I always say that if you're going to watch independent wrestling, that you go in with an open mind, because you're going to see a lot of things that you do not see on traditional American television. You just are not going to. I always kind of get that caution to people when they go into these shows. But what were my thoughts on the shows? How did I feel about it? So here's the thing. This was my 8th GCW show. Yeah, believe it or not, I've been to 8 GCW shows in the last 4 years. And of those 8, I'm going to say this is probably like somewhere in the middle. Like, it's not like top 3, maybe top 5, but not top 3. Like, it doesn't even come close to my favorite GCW show, which honestly is my favorite wrestling show that I ever attended, which was Joey Janella Spring Break 3 Night 1, which happened in 2019. That show is phenomenal. This one, for the vibe of the show, for what it was to professional wrestling, I think it definitely is up there. But the quality of the show itself is not that of being like a great show. To not dance around it, I thought the show itself was underwhelming. Like, it was an underwhelming show, because I think a lot of people, fans of GCW, GCW fans, had high expectations going into this show. And then there was a lot of people who did not make the show, and we'll talk about that in a bit. There were quite a few botches, but I mean, that's wrestling for you. There's going to be botches in wrestling, but a lot of noticeable ones. Some questionable booking decisions, and a very, very, very oddly put together closer to the show. So we'll break it down here, starting off with the pre-show. Let me just say, and this is going to come across very surprising to a lot of people, and I'm prepared for you guys to be like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about, whatever. My match of the night, honestly, was on the pre-show. Like, believe it or not, I thought there was a match of the pre-show that I thought was like the best match of the entire show. Which, I don't know, for some of you might not even count it. Like, oh, the pre-show doesn't count. It's part of the show. I thought this was the best match of the show. That was actually the second match on the pre-show. The first match was a battle royal, and there were some good names in there. You had Janai Kai, you had Ruckus, you had Cole Radrick, you had Nate Webb. Also, the biggest name in that battle royal was AEW's Thunder Rosa, which she got probably one of the biggest pops of the entire show. Seeing her there was just awesome. She did not win it, sadly. A guy by the name of Big Vin, I believe, won the match. I'm not familiar with him. When he won, it was a very mid reaction from the crowd, because, like I said, I think a lot of the people who came out to this show might have either been first time fans or people who don't attend a lot of GCW shows, because GCW has a very niche cult following of independent hardcore wrestling fans. And this was a sold out show. There was at least like 2,000-3,000, maybe even more than that, people here. I do not believe for a second all these people were hardcore fans of the product. They just weren't, because I can't even say that I'm a hardcore fan of the product. But like the reaction to him winning was kind of like somewhere in between. The battle royal was fine. It kind of happened. The 6-man scramble. Here's the thing about GCW that I love. GCW, I believe, is the best company when it comes to like spots. Like, if you are somebody who is into high flying, aerialistic, almost borderline like acrobats, Game Changer Wrestling has some of the best profound high flying you can see in all professional wrestling. I will say that much. In any GCW event I've attended, the scramble matches or 6-man tags with luchadors are always the best like showcase matches on the show. And in here, you had Jack Cartwheel, who I've never seen before. You had Dante Leon, who I've never seen before. Grim Reaper, who I've also never seen before. Ninja Mac, who I've heard of but never seen before. Nick Wayne, who I've also never seen before. And then Alex Zane, who is a former NXT wrestler. I've seen him even before, dating back before NXT. But this was just crazy. Like, it was all over the place. There were a few bots in here, yes. But Dante Leon, this dude was a fucking madman. I mean, this dude did an inverted RKO from the top rope. At one point, he even did a fucking red arrow into an RKO, which both I've never seen in my entire life. It was just outstanding. The Grim Reaper was also really cool because this guy was high flying as well, but he was doing it while smoking a fucking blunt. Like, how fucking epic is that? And then you had Ninja Mac in here. Ninja Mac, this guy was a true aerialist. This guy did like multi-rotational flips just about every other second. I felt like Alex Zane in here, he was really good, but like, he was the guy who almost got outshined in a sense by some of the talent in here. Alex Zane had like a whole different attire too, which was, he was dripped out. Dripped out. I thought that was pretty crazy. Nick Wayne and Jack Cartwheel, they were good in here as well, but like, I think like the shining stars were definitely Dante Leon, Ninja Mac, and Grim Reaper. And Grim Reaper ended up winning the match. I highly recommend anybody watching this, if you are into high flying wrestling, you go to GCW's YouTube channel and you check out this match. You're going to love it. It is great. After that, we got into the main show. They started off with the brass ring ladder match. This match ended up getting changed around. This match originally featuring Lio Rush, Tony Deppen, Alex Colon, Jordan Oliver, and PCO, but Lio Rush was substituted out of this match. He was later put into a match further in the card, but we'll talk about that. So subbing in for Lio Rush was G-Raver, and it was AJ Gray. So the ladder match was an interesting ladder match. I've seen plenty of Money in the Bank ladder matches. This is nowhere near a lot of the Money in the Bank ladder matches I've seen. I thought it was very tame for a GCW. Like, this is basically the GCW hardcore, because GCW has a lot of hardcore death matches, and I think because of the New York State of Commission, they had a lot of limitations on this show, as we can see, by the lack of blood, by the lack of light tubes, by the lack of glass. Like, there was a lot. If you were a hardcore GCW fan, you would be disappointed because they stripped away almost any aspect of deathmatch wrestling on the show. This was a very tame, probably the most tame GCW show I've ever been to. And that might have been why a lot of fans were disappointed with the show. It was tame. This ladder match lacked a lot of the things that GCW would offer in this type of hardcore setting. There were some cool spots in here. A very dangerous spot. One of the wrestlers in here, AJ Gray, there was this one big ladder outside the ring, and AJ Gray went to climb up the ladder, and he was obviously going to do a dive off the ladder into the ring onto Alex Colon. Now, the big mistake that AJ Gray made in this, and I think we can all agree, was that he went to dive, but rather than diving off the ladder with the ladder facing the ring, he dove off the ladder with the ladder facing like not opposite the ring, but like instead of the ladder facing this way where the ring, here's the ring. Instead of the ladder facing this way, the ladder was facing this way. So AJ Gray had to dive off a ladder that was facing this way, which is just never going to end well because a ladder is balanced for somebody to go up the right way, to go up this way. So if you go this way, your body weight is going to shift the ladder this way. So once he went to jump off, the ladder basically just shifted in the opposite direction, and he didn't make the dive. He fell off the ladder. Thankfully, he was okay, well enough to finish the match, but he fell onto the rope. I put it on my TikTok. Go follow my TikTok, by the way. It's Suplex under the same name. I posted like 5 GCW videos, and they're all doing very well. Go check them out. They're really cool. But luckily, he was okay. He ended up actually winning the match, which surprised me because he had that spot. But yeah, he ended up winning the match, which was cool. The next match in here was the second best match of the show, and that was the Lucha tag match. So we had Team Gringo, we had Gringo Loco, Demonic Flamita, and Aries versus Team Bandito. We had Bandito, Laredo Kid, and ASF. This was another just fantastic showing of Lucha Libre, acrobatic, aerialistic wrestling. There was so much going on in this match. It was chaotic. It was crazy. It was spotty. I can't even say enough things about this match. I cannot go into detail all the spots that happened because there was just too much that happened. Highly recommend you go check this match out if you're into spotty goodness, because that's what this match was. The finish to this match was actually kind of botched. I don't know what Gringo Loco and the ASF were going for, but it was going to be dope as hell if it went off the way it was supposed to. But they botched the top rope move, and then I think Gringo Loco ended up improvising into a pile driver, which he won with. So the ending was a bit odd because, you know, just by watching, that was not the planned ending, or at least we think that was not the planned ending. I would like to believe that wasn't, because they had a spot planned before and it did not work. So they probably just went into this spot. It was an odd ending to what otherwise was a tremendous showcase of high-flying action. Now, following this was supposed to be Jonathan Gresham versus Blake Christian for the Ring of Honor Championship, but Blake Christian came out to the ring and sadly told us that Jonathan Gresham could not make it there tonight, so he needed a new opponent. And in the place of Jonathan Gresham was the man who was supposed to be in a ladder match, and that was Lio Rush. Lio Rush and Blake Christian have had plenty of matches in GCW before, and their matches have been good. This one was a fairly good match. This, I honestly believe, was the cool down match for some people. Like, even though there was some good stuff in here, even myself to a degree were kind of like, you know, checking Twitter, you know, everybody going to the bathroom. Like, this is the match for certain people where they were just trying to get back into things. So we just had a battle royal. We just had a dope scramble match. Then we had a ladder match. Then we had this high flights. Like, you gotta calm down at some point. You know what I mean? And even though Blake Christian and Lio Rush are great high flyers, there were some points in this match where they were slowing it down and doing rest holds. So that's when a lot of the crowd got disinterested, was during the rest hold spots. And then by the time they tried to get back into doing the high flying, I think a good portion of the crowd, they were watching, but the investment wasn't completely there, because you slowed down. You left too much of an opening for people to walk away and check their phones. So that was, I don't want to say it was not good, because I thought the match was fairly good, but it could have been better. And I think a lot of that was due to the interest level being just weighing, because it slowed down after we had so much action. And like I said, you have to slow down at some point, and sadly this was the match where they cooled down at. Blake Christian ended up winning this match with a 450 stomp onto Lio Rush for the pin, so that was good for him. After this, we got into one of the most hyped up matches on this show. It was Matt Cardona versus Joey Janela. This match, so let me start off by saying Matt Cardona, hands down, is one of the best heels in all of professional wrestling. I think when he came into GCW in early 2021 and he came in and started feuding with Nick Gage, fans were kind of all weird about it, and I understand why. I mean, it's Matt Cardona, former Zack Ryder. Like, what could he offer an independent wrestling juggernaut like GCW? What can he offer them? But nobody could have expected Matt Cardona to be like such a such an asshole. Like, he is such a great asshole character. Like, the way he basically rides off the fact that he is a former WWE wrestler, and he mocks his former WWE run, or even uses it to his advantage, and basically tries to put down the indies. Like, I'm a much bigger star than you. I've been in AEW. I've been in WWE. And he's taking these shots at these companies he's been in while taking shots at GCW and being an asshole and cheating. I think Matt Cardona has really reinvigorated what a heel can be to professional wrestling without, just being the guy who comes out here and says the same shit every single week. Like, this guy is out here dressing like Vince McMahon. He's out here doing spots. Like, one of the best spots of the match was when he was with his wife, Chelsea Green. Now, part of the story of this match is that Mark Cardona and Chelsea Green, they're married. But Chelsea Green was also hanging out with Joey Janella, and we don't know what's going on. Is Chelsea on Matt's side? Is she on Joey's side? Obviously, we figured out she's going to be on Matt's side because they're married. Joey Janela was in the ring, right? And he was about to hit, I think, Matt Cardona with something. And Chelsea gets in between them. She's about to stop him. And she kicks Matt Cardona in the dick. And it looks like she's helping Joey Janela. The crowd is going crazy. Like, oh my God, she just turned on her husband. And as Joey Janela is going to the top rope to do a move, Chelsea Green knocks him down. And we're like, huh? So she's now on anybody's side? And then Matt Cardona gets up, almost like he wasn't fazed by the dick kick. And then he pulls out a cup. Like, he and Chelsea were behind it the whole time. He got kicked in the dick, but it didn't hurt him because he had a cup and swerved everybody. Like, it was a swerve in the middle of the match, bro. It was so awesome. I thought this was such a great spot. And to an extent, the match itself was fine. I thought the match wasn't like overly great in terms of the work rate or the spots. But once you got to the halfway point, then it just became a fucking mess. Like, they did too much in this match. Because at one point, Mark Sterling comes out. Yeah, like Mark Sterling from AEW, the manager of Jade Cargo. And I'm sitting here like, is Jade Cargo coming out? That'd be cool, but I don't understand what she has to do with this match. And he didn't bring out Jade, but he brought out Vince McMahon. But not the real Vince McMahon. It was a guy wearing a Vince McMahon mask. And it's like, okay, haha, but why are we doing this right now? Like, what's going on here? And the guy takes off the mask, and it's Virgil and Joey Janela have history, but it's like, what are we doing? What's going on here? Why is this happening? In my head, I'm like, I'm popping, but I'm like, why is this happening? What's going on here? So then they don't even get that involved. They still end up wrestling Joey Janela and Matt Cardona doing spots, and Joey Janela's kicking out of a bunch of shit he honestly shouldn't be kicking out of. So then Hornswoggle comes from underneath the ring, and I'm like, what is Hornswoggle doing here? I don't even know what his tie is to this entire thing. Hornswoggle's in the ring. He's doing something. I forgot what he's doing. Then this 400-pound guy, I know his name now is Sam Stackhouse. He's a pro wrestler. I didn't know this, and I think most of the audience didn't know this because a lot of people in the crowd, my section were like, why is there a fan in the ring? Like, we didn't know who the fuck this guy was. He got into the ring, and he goes toe-to-toe with Hornswoggle, and the crowd is just fucking confused because they're like, what's happening? Why are these, like, what do you two have to do with Joey Janela and Matt Cardona? Like, it doesn't make any sense. So then this dude knocks down Hornswoggle, goes to moonsault, and it's a cool visual of him moonsaulting on the Hornswoggle. Hornswoggle gets out the way, and the crowd doesn't really pop for it because they're fucking confused. They're befuddled. Joey Janela's in trouble, and then Marco Stunt comes out, and the crowd popped for Marco Stunt because Marco Stunt's never on AEW television. Just fuck Marco. He's never booked anymore. So the crowd popped for Marco. I popped for Marco, and Marco and Joey Janela, they've had a match at the same Joey Janela Spring Break show that I talked about earlier in this review. So I popped big for that because, oh my God, they had a match on Joey Janela's Spring. Like, yeah, they're back. So he's helping them out. He gets knocked down. Now it's just Joey and Matt again. And I'm like, okay. So now they're kicking out a move still. And and this match is going longer than it should. Now we're going into the near 20-minute mark. And if you watch AEW, if you watch New Japan, a 20-minute long match is not necessarily that long compared to hour-long, 30-minute long matches we've seen before. But this is on an independent wrestling show. There's not too many independent wrestling shows that have matches that are like 20, 30 minutes long. Like, people are just asking, why is this match still going? What's the point? What are we doing here? So then, a guy comes into the ring, all black jacket, all black shirt. He has on a black motorcycle helmet. And it's a callback to ECW One Night Stand 06 with Edge coming into the ring to interfere between Rob Van Dam and John Cena. Which, like, I was cool. Crowd's like, oh my God, it's Edge. We were just saying, like, joking, like, oh my God, it's Edge. Crowd didn't know who it was. So the guy spears Joey Janella through a door. And he takes off the helmet, and it's Kurt Hawkins. It's not Kurt Hawkins. Well, it's not Kurt Hawkins anymore. It's, what's the guy's name? Brian Myers. It's Kurt Hawkins. It's Zack Ryder's old tag team partner from back when they were the Edge Heads. And it makes so much sense because, you know, he's doing an Edge spot. They used to be the Edge. It was cool. It was cool. And the crowd, they popped a little bit. But they didn't pop as big as they could have because I think they were just so out of it by this point. But he assists in Matt Cardona winning this match. And this match was a mess. Like, it was a mess. Like, I wish I could say I like this match. I like the beginning, like the first 5 minutes, but once you get to 10 minutes, it's just getting to garbage. So after that, we then got into what I thought was one of the best built-up matches on the show. It was Alley Catch versus Ruby Soho. Alley Catch, from what I've been told, has been having a really good run on GCW, having a lot of great matches, a lot of good matches, a lot of really good opponents, and Ruby Soho being one of her dream opponents, her being in, you know, this Hammerstein Ballroom, like, it's a big deal for her. And of course, Ruby Soho, AEW's own, she's been killing it on AEW and just killing it across the indie scene. This is a really big deal for these women, and I thought their match was fine. It was an okay match. I thought it could have been better. Ruby Soho ended up winning the match, which it disappointed the crowd. Ruby Soho got a big pop coming into this, but a good portion, I'm not gonna say most of them, but a good portion of people who came to there were GCW fans, and Alley Catch is a GCW OG. So when she lost, the crowd, I would say 80% of the crowd at one point literally booed the finish. They booed Ruby Soho winning the match because the story was about Alley Catch. The story wasn't really designed revolving around Ruby Soho. Ruby Soho was just a backdrop to the bigger story, which was Alley Catch finally getting her moment and being christened as a, you know, GCW's own female wrestler, and then she lost. So it just kind of, like, we get why she lost because it's Ruby Soho, but it's like she really shouldn't have. So the crowd booed. But then they hugged and they started cheering, and it was like, okay. Like one of those booking decisions where it's like, I don't understand why we did that. I understand why, but it's like, maybe it was a contract thing. Maybe Ruby Soho couldn't lose, but I don't know. That's just an assumption. Now, after that, we got Jeff Jarrett versus Effy. Effy's like one of the best characters in all of GCW. Jeff Jarrett is a WWE legend, Impact legend. He's done it all. And one of their stories is that, you know, Jeff Jarrett came back, started attacking Effy to get his name in GCW, and Effy's been ignoring him. And Jeff Jarrett ended up bashing Alley Cat over the head with a guitar, and that really motivated Effy to accept this challenge. And when Jeff Jarrett and Effy had their match, honestly, I'll be completely honest, this was better than I expected it to be. It wasn't great. I thought it was fairly good as well, but Jeff Jarrett was way more active in this match than I thought he would be. I'll just say that much. There was a guitar usage in this match. Jeff Jarrett bashed the guitar over the head of Effy, and Effy hulked up and everything. There were some homoerotic spots in here, as you would guess, from Effy, which the crowd liked, which was awesome. But the finish did come when Jeff Jarrett bashed the guitar over Effy's head, and Effy hulked up. He's like, and then he hit his finisher while Effy's head was still on the, through the guitar onto Effy. Effy's head smashing the guitar, and he pins Effy. And it was almost like a letdown in a sense, because it's like, yeah, Jeff Jarrett's a legend and all, but the story was designed for Effy to win, and he lost. So it's like back to back, we had GCW guys losing. So that also ended up dampening the crowd a bit. Like the crowd almost came down a bit after Jeff Jarrett won. It was cool to see Jeff Jarrett, but I don't think anybody was really begging for him to win this match. So that was another questionable decision from GCW. Then came the GCW World Championship match between Jon Moxley and Hammerstein. Now, mind you, Eddie Kingston was supposed to be on the show, but he couldn't make it. He has an orbital injury, so that was a little bit disappointing. And another disappointment came because we all thought we were going to sing Wild Things live at the Hammerstein Ballroom, and then he came out to something else, and the crowd almost... It felt like the crowd almost was completely let down by the fact he couldn't sing Wild Things, because they were all standing on their feet and ready to start singing. And then when they heard a different chime, everybody just looked around like people literally were confused when he came out to something else. They popped when he came out, but I assure you, the people in the crowd were just completely deflated by the fact that we couldn't sing Wild Things. But Jon Moxley and Homicide, they had the best match they could have had. They had the best baseline wrestling match on the show. From what I've told, it ended up going either a bit overtime or undertime. I'm not too sure. There could have been more added to this match, I'll be honest, from what we got. Jon Moxley ended up winning the match, hitting a elevated paradigm shift onto Homicide, onto steel chairs, I believe, to get the win. Now, Homicide ended up kicking out of the paradigm shift earlier in the match, which was crazy, but he ended up going down to another paradigm shift onto chairs, and Jon Moxley retained the GCW Championship. Now, we all thought this was the main event of the show, but then a lot of people remember, oh wait, the Briscoes didn't have their match. The Briscoes was doing an open challenge. So then came the main event, which was the Briscoes having their GCW World Tag Team Championship Open Challenge. Majority of the people there, and majority of the people at home, thought for sure it was going to be FTR. Is it our fault for having too high expectations? Maybe so. It was not FTR. There were even FTR chants before the match started, and there were FTR chants after the Briscoes came out. And then when Matt Tremont, who is a GCW OG, came out, it was almost like the crowd was fully erect, and then they they went flaccid after Matt Tremont came out. There was a pop for him, you know what I mean? But we were wanting somebody else to come out. Be honest, we were wanting somebody else to come out. Matt Tremont came out, and then he brought out his tag team partner, which the fans were wondering if he's going to be there or not, and it was indeed Nick fucking Gage, and the crowd went crazy. Nick Gage, Matt Tremont ended up being the people accepting the open challenge, and then the match started, and they started off with doors and chairs, and they were going at each other. Got 5 minutes in, and then it ended. It just abruptly, just out of nowhere, Nick Gage hit a pile driver onto one of the Briscoe brothers. He went for the pin, and it looked like one of the Briscoes was going to break it up. Actually, he did break it up, but the referee's hand hit the mat for a 3 count, and the match ended. And the wrestler, some of the wrestlers looked shocked. The people in the crowd that were I took a video of it when the referee counted 3. I'm gonna say 75% of people in the crowd were still sitting down and didn't pop, because once again, for maybe the 5th time that night, they were confused. They were wait, that was it? The match literally went 5 or 6 minutes, and it just ended. It was very abrupt. They were test for time. They had a hard stop at 11 p.m., and they were trying to get it done, wrap it up at that time. And they did execute getting it done at the time they were supposed to, but at the dismay that the match did not get any time. It was underwhelming. It was, honestly, what to say, it was bad. They got no time. Nobody was looking forward to seeing a 6-minute long tag team match in the main event, no matter who you featured in there. And your new tag team champions were Nick Gage and Matt Tremont. And, they went home, and everybody got into the ring from GCW, and they were happy and celebrating everything. And it was yeah, it was cool. But when you put it all together and wrap it into one bunch, this was a underwhelming show. There were higher expectations from a lot of fans, and I think a lot of those high expectations were not met. I mean, now some of it was due to the fact that we were missing a lot of people. We were missing Jonathan Gresham. We were missing Eddie Kingston. We were missing, I think one other head was missing from this show. Shit happens. But there was overbooking. There were a good amount of botches. And once again, I will reiterate, there are expectations from GCW when it comes to blood, when it comes to death matches. And this was the most tame, watered down version of a GCW show that I've seen, and I understand why they watered it down. They literally had to, due to where they were, and probably due to the fact that they didn't want to scare off maybe some newer fans. Possibly, that could be it too. But when you do that and you end up not delivering in other aspects and some aspects under delivering, what you end up having is a lot of fans that were left desiring for more. I feel like I can understand why a lot of wrestling fans were completely disappointed with this show and felt like they either wasted their money or this might be the first and last time they watched GCW. I mean, I myself was willing to pay for my friend to watch this show. He couldn't make it, and I'm like, well, I'm glad he didn't, because I feel like he probably wouldn't have enjoyed this show as much. You know what I mean? But ultimately, this show, in a nutshell, is it worth watching? I'm going to say it really was not worth watching. The two things worth watching on the show were the scramble on the pre-show and the 6-man on the main show, in the tag on the main show. But outside of that, the ladder match was fine. Nothing special. The Blake Christian and Leo Rush match was fine as well. The Matt Cardona and Joey Jet was just completely overbooked. The Alley Catch and Ruby Soho match was fine as well. Effy and Jeff Jarrett was good, but the wrong person won. John Moxley and Homicide was good, but left to be desired. And then the main event just completely was the wrong way to send your audience home. GCW are going to be having another spring break show WrestleMania weekend. If you are willing to give GCW another chance, I highly recommend you wait until WrestleMania weekend and you either buy a ticket to or you watch Joey Janella Spring Break 6, because that is normally, in my opinion, the best wrestling show you could see all year round. I've attended 2 Joey Janella Spring Breaks, and this year will be my 3rd. I'm super amped for that show, and I think this will probably be like 5 times better than the show we saw here. Overall, I loved my experience being at the Hammerstein Ballroom. I met some of you people actually knew who I was, which was awesome. I got to meet up with a few content creators. I got to meet up with some people I met on Twitter. That was awesome. And I think that helped a lot with my experience there. But at the end of the day, this show was almost... I guess there's one wrestler who could kind of describe the way this show was, and I'll let him describe it for you.